Hello and welcome to Connected, episode 340. It's made possible by our sponsors, Hello, Smile, and Squarespace. My name is Stephen Hackett, and I'm joined by Mr. Federico Viticci.
Hello, Stephen. How are you? Welcome back.
It is good to be back. I am well. Thank you all for holding down the fort last week.
How's your email?
It's great. We will get into that. We have a lot of follow-up. We are also joined by Mr. Myke Hurley.
Arrivederci.
That's not what you say when you say hi. That's literally goodbye. Why would you say
Yeah,
goodbye?
I'm done.
Oh, yeah, okay,
One and done
bye.
today. I've cashed my check. I'm out of here. That was it. I put in my little moment.
Mike, there's no check.
Then I'll stick around.
All right, let's do the show then.
Follow up. We got a lot of email because you guys wanted people to email me, which I enjoy.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed this email from listener Carlos, who wrote in just to say that he missed me having on the episode.
Carlos, right? Quote unquote Carlos.
Yeah. Everyone knows that Steven's middle name is Carlos.
That's not true at all.
Steven, Carlos is you, right?
No.
Stephen Carlos Hackett.
I mean, come on. It's fine. Come on.
No.
We all know. It's really you. I'm pretty sure at some point you said to us years ago on iMessage that if you could have like an exotic name, you would pick Carlos. And now of all people who wrote in to say that they really miss Steven, Carlos wrote in. Sure.
Carlos at 512pixels.net. It's the full URL there.
That's like the name that Steven uses when he doesn't want to be recognized online.
Carlos Voorhees.
One true Carlos.
One true Carlos. All right. We also got an email from Jed about the shortcut URLs. Federico, can you take this one for us?
I ask, Jet notes how last week we mentioned how Apple was never able to recover the old workflow.is links for old workflows shared by people. But it turns out that there's sort of a workaround way to actually use those links still in 2021. And the way you do them is... you got to open them in a new or background tab in Safari or another browser on your device. And then it redirects you to the iCloud link. So it seems like if you tap those links directly, it takes you to shortcuts and it doesn't work anymore. But if you open in a background tab, it loads the web version of the link. And so it appears that Apple is still doing that migration from workflow.is to iCloud.com. So just make sure that you open them in a background tab, and from there you will get the installation button, the Get Shortcut button on the iCloud.com webpage. Just remember, do not open those links in shortcuts directly. So you can go back and visit one of my old workflow stories, and you can still download those workflows as shortcuts.
See, this feels like something that's going to stop working now because you mentioned it.
Yes.
Well, I don't know. I feel like this is just.
Jed.
I feel like this is just one of those things where when it's trying to open the app automatically, it's failing, right? So like these links do exist. It's just if it does now I'm going to open it in the app doesn't know what to do about it, even though the link exists. Like, like sometimes you would get this where you're trying to open a YouTube video or whatever, and you don't want it to open in the YouTube app, so you just open it in like a tab, and it stops from the, what is that redirection called? Like when it opens up for you in the application instead of where you want it to go, like just in a web browser.
Deep linking.
Deep linking. There you go. Like, because I think that's what this seems like, right? That this is an issue with workflow links, deep linking to shortcuts. They don't work.
Yeah, it looks like it. I have some real-time follow-up, guys.
Amazing.
iOS 14.5 Beta 7 is out. Also, WatchOS 7.4. But all the Beta 7s are out today.
Amazing. Which
is just fantastic news for me because I took like 50 screenshots a few days ago. and now, I don't think I'm going to have to redo them. I think it's fine. I don't think there's going to be anything new in this beta either because they did the new Siri voices last week. I believe 14.5 is coming out soon, so it's good that they're ramping up the beta releases. I have.
Did you see that Apple did a press release just before we began the show today about the tile?
For Find My?
Yeah.
Yes. That is also something that Apple announced today. They had an official introduction for the third-party integrations in the Find My app. I only skimmed the press release, but it seems like Apple teamed up with a bunch of third-party manufacturers for all kinds of accessories, including, Steven, a bike, I believe, that you will
Sweet.
be able to... I think the official terminology is locate with Apple Find My. There's an official badge and everything. So you will find this logo on these new accessories that say, the logo says locate with Apple Find My. And you know,
Why isn't it Find? Why not Find with Find My? Like, it's just, that's more fun.
Apple Find would have been nice as a name with Apple Find. I don't know, but they must really like Find My. So yeah.
Van Moof's S3 and X3 e-bikes, Belkin Soundform Freedom True Wireless earbuds, and the Chipolo
the
One
Belkin
Spot
one.
item finder.
What?
Just going to
Chipotle?
say,
What?
guys, don't think there's been a great take-up. Is what
Did you
I'm
say
gonna
Chipotle?
say.
Oh no, Chipolo. Okay.
Yeah, Chipotle.
Where's my
You need to
burrito?
find your burrito. I'm just going to say, don't think there's been a great take-up for the Find My program so far, because this is a real ragtag group of stuff.
I kind of really want the Van Moof. Where can I shop Van Moof?
Yeah, those bikes are sweet.
I think that's very much clearly the winner of these, right?
The Van Moof?
Yeah, I mean, who's buying Belkin's Soundform Freedom True wireless earbuds?
You know, John
Oh.
Voorhees is going to buy them. You know he's going to do it.
The Chipotle tracker doesn't ship until June.
Yeah. And it's just one of these little tracking things. What is Chipolo? I've never heard of this company before.
Chipolo, they do... What do they do?
The finder with the reminder. This is...
Wait,
It
what?
seems like this is their whole thing. It's
I mean,
just...
the Chipolo One Spot. A special edition of the... It's like a tile tracker?
Yeah, that's all it is. I mean,
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a tile tracker.
But it's just a company that doesn't care about having their own service, I guess.
Yeah.
They make their money on just selling you
Life is
little discs.
messy. Finding your things doesn't have to be.
To make a keyboard thing, they have one that looks like a card, but it looks like the one spot, the keychain one, is what's going to ship in June. Man, maybe 14.5 is never coming out.
It's just going to be in beta forever, and then 14.6 is going to happen.
All right, I put my email in their list to contact me when it's available.
I'm torn between buying the Chipolo One Spot or the Van Moof. Mostly because I really like saying Van Moof. Like, it's a satisfying word to say. So...
Well, the Van Move X3 costs £1,798, Federico. So,
Sure.
you know,
I mean,
choose your poison, really. I don't think the Chipolo is going to cost that money.
I've bought headphone cables that cost that much.
Ah,
so-
no.
Yeah, no, don't say that. Don't say that. On the,
What do you mean don't say that? You said that.
You said
no
it.
one else said
No,
it.
I was
you said it.
saying that to myself. I was reminding it to myself. Like,
Right.
Anyway, yes, that was real-time follow-up.
Speaking of content creators and their money, Clubhouse is here to save us all. They announced the other day that they are going to be rolling out payments, which is monetization within Clubhouse. Basically, you can select a creator in Clubhouse and the amount that you want to send. You give Clubhouse your credit card number and they use Stripe and send the money to the creator. So it's not using in-app purchase or anything like that. It's just a credit card form in an app using Stripe, which...
And Apple is okay with it?
Well, see, that's the thing. It seems like they wouldn't be okay with this because it's basically bypassing their cut. So I don't know.
Technically, this is a person-to-person payment because you don't get anything from what I can understand. So if I want to give Steven money in Clubhouse...
Please.
Okay. I don't get anything for it, right? Except for having given Steven some money. So it's not a digital good. There's no digital good that's been exchanged. I've just given him some money. And if Clubhouse takes no money from it...
So it's like a Venmo type thing, which is like your...
Yeah, it's more like a person-to-person payment via Stripe. So like,
yeah, I guess
it's kind of like I can buy things in other applications. Like I can in Instagram, I can put my credit card number in the web browser.
Yeah, same with the Amazon app.
And so I don't know about this because I don't see what Apple could want to take money for. And you might think to yourself, hey, but what about Twitch?
Hey.
Right? But on Twitch, like Amazon Twitch is taking money. So, and you also get benefits for subscribing to somebody on Twitch. Like you actually get stuff for that.
So you think that's the line, that if they were doing this and you could unlock special paid-only streams, then maybe they'd run afoul of the rules?
And or if Clubhouse took a cut. I think if Clubhouse took a cut, it would have to go through an app purchase. But Clubhouse is taking no money, so there's no 30% to take from. I don't know. This is an interesting line. It's publicized enough that Apple definitely know about it if they didn't before, right? They know about it now. I'm going to be keen to see what happens with this, but I can't see how they would... I don't know what argument Apple has for this. Like, there's no digital good being exchanged of any kind here, from what I can see.
Okay, but I mean, at this point, the real question is, which one of these growth hackers do we want to support on Clubhouse?
Whichever one's the best one, I guess, so we can hack our growth most efficiently.
I kind of want to give my money to a bunch of those people, but like $1. Can you send $1 to a Clubhouse growth hacker?
Probably.
Cool.
They're rolling this out at the moment. Like anyone can pay, but only a certain select amount can actually receive money, if that makes sense. So, Federico, you could go find your favorite growth hacker, but it has to be one of your favorite growth hackers who's part of the Clubhouse club.
I only tip my favorites. Absolutely. Yes. Well, I can do it now because my iPhone is rebooting to install the beta, but I will do it as soon as it's back.
Myke, can you close out the story of the AirPods Max?
Yeah, actually, because the battery life problem seems to have been completely solved.
Sweet.
Like I left my AirPods for a week, like just purposely, just left them. And I don't remember where I started and where I ended up. That wasn't the thing, because basically if I would have done that before, it would 100% have been dead. And there was still battery life. Like I picked them up today, I hadn't touched them for a week. I had 60% battery, I hadn't charged them. So I believe that the firmware update from a couple of weeks ago or a month or so ago has fixed all of the battery life issues that I was having with the AirPods Max. And so now I am enjoying them again, because I didn't really want to say this at the time, but I'd stopped using them because they were so frustrating to me. But now this week, I've been using them again because I don't feel like I'm like playing Russian roulette with the battery every time I pick them up. So I'm very pleased that my expensive, but I think very nice earphones, AirPods, whatever they're called, are working again.
I never stopped using them, but I also noticed the battery life improvement. So yes, I'm very happy with them.
Yeah, I had like a bad taste from them. You know what I mean? Like it was just like I wasn't enjoying the product because every time I was picking them up, I was getting angry about it. So I just stopped using them for a bit. But now I'm back on the AirPods Max train again.
Nice.
Cool. I'm glad it fixed it.
Yeah, I'm just happy that it wasn't like a hardware flaw, it seems like, because that was my concern, right? Like my theory was it was the proximity sensors. I still think it might have been the proximity sensors that were causing the issue, but they seems to have done something in the firmware that has changed, I guess, the way that they're being, that's the way something's working anyway, so I'm pleased.
I have some real-time breaking news.
Okay.
Breaking news, just
because we didn't read the whole...
news.
Just because it came out when we were recording, so we were skimming it. But that PR release about Apple Find My stuff says that the new products will be available beginning next week. So 14.5 out next week.
Uh-oh.
I'm ready. No. I have over 7,000 words ready to go, baby. It's all done, all taken care of. I don't care anymore.
Thank you to Jay Bradley in the Discord for pointing that out to us. Hopefully we can check this stuff out.
What is that thing you're doing?
It's the breaking news sound.
What is the breaking news sound?
That sound.
What, like a fanfare? What is it?
It's like a little Morse code type thing.
This episode of Connected is brought to you by our friends over at Hello. Hello makes insanely comfortable buckwheat pillows. If you haven't tried one of these, they're actually really different from like regular fluffy pillows. They support your head and neck. They don't collapse under the weight of your head like traditional pillows. And they stay cool and dry, so you don't have to like turn it over in the middle of the night to the cool side. It's always cool because it breathes better. It doesn't get all warm and humid. Plus, you can add or remove filling to suit your needs, so your pillow can be just the way you like it. These have been popular for a really long time in places like Japan, and they're on fancy hotels' pillow menus, which one day I promise I will get to partake in. We got one of these a couple of years ago, and my daughter stole it. She went to it immediately, so we were able to adjust it for her, take out some of the buckwheat, and she really enjoys it, and I haven't gotten it back yet. Hello is made in the USA with quality construction and materials. The certified organic cotton case is cut and sewn for durability, and the buckwheat is grown and milled in the United States. So if you're curious to try one, you can try it for 60 nights. So sleep on it, and if it's not for you, you can send it back for a refund. Head on over to hellopillow.com/connected to get your own buckwheat pillow. That's HULLO pillow.com/connected. And if you buy more than one, they have a special discount up to $20 off depending on the size you're looking at. They have fast free shipping with every order, and 1% of all profits are donated to the Nature Conservancy. So give it a try. If you love it, you keep it, and if you don't, just send it back. Head on over to hellopillow.com/connected right now. Our thanks to Hello for their support of the show and Relay FM. All right, this caught my eye. There was a report on Mac Rumors yesterday about the adoption rate of iOS 14. So according to data collected by Mixpanel, iOS 14 is now installed on 90% of all compatible devices. That's less than 7 months after launch. And it got me thinking, like, is that fast? Is that slow? Is it good? Is it bad? And so I went and looked up the iOS 13 numbers. So in June 2020, so 9 months after iOS 13 had been released, it was pretty far behind. The company said then that 81% of iPhone and iPod Touch devices were running iOS 13, while just 73% of iPads were running iPad OS. So I think 13's reputation in the beginning, I don't think it ever really outgrew that, is kind of how I read this.
Yeah, and people were burned, from all those bugs and issues that iOS 13 had at launch. And if you remember, there was a report on Bloomberg by Mark Gurman saying how following the bad reception to iOS 13, Apple was going to change how they were going to make iOS. And I mean, which was kind of ironic because after all, they did have to change how they worked on iOS because the pandemic happened. So yeah, you did change your process for working on new versions of iOS, but I guess for different reasons. Still, I do remember like when iOS 13 came out, that was the super weird initial release when they did like first only iOS came out, then iPadOS came out at the end of the month, but iPadOS 13.0 never really came out. The first version of iPadOS was 13.1.
Well, don't forget that 13 did ship, but only if you bought the new iPhone. Remember?
No, I think you could also download it.
No, but do you remember that was the year where it came out on the iPhone first because they had to put it on there.
Yes, it came to the iPhone
and it was
first.
only on the new ones, and then 13.1 or whatever it was shipped on the older phones. It was like super up and down. It was a very weird one.
And then they did like before the end of the year, I think there were like 8 or 9 software updates to iOS 13. It was not good. It was
yeah, but Apple can thank _David Smith for that 90%.
Because of Widget Smith.
Widget Smith. I genuinely believe this.
Totally.
Like widgets in general, and I think Widget Smith predominantly because it was the most popular. I think that drove adoption of iOS 14 in like the first few months. And those statistics make me feel like if like it just confirms what I think we were all thinking anyway, that there will be some kind of enhancements to widgets this year. I think that for a little bit...
Do you feel like young people are still using Widgetsmith and like custom home screens?
I mean, I think so. I did look recently, and in the UK at least, like Widgetsmith was like still in the top 20. Like, I think it's still a thing. I mean, I know I use it. I think if you get used to using widgets, you don't like stop using them. They just become a part of your home screen. You know what I mean?
I really hope that those young people refer to David as Widget Daddy. That's what I would call David. That's what I would do. But seriously, though, I really do feel like there's a case to be made for having more home screen customizations in iOS 15 than maybe Apple would have expected last year because of the response that we've seen to apps like Widgetsmith and in general, like the response to widgets and customization. I think Apple must have seen this coming to an extent, right? But I think they must have also been surprised by just how much people have been into it. And when you think about it, this was also part of my conclusion in the iOS 14 review. I think it's also because of the times that we're living in right now that people were so into home screen customization. First of all, because it was like a nice way to spend your time at home, just fiddling with your iPhone. Like, you know, we're all locked in and we have time to waste. And so let's just make a bunch of custom icons and spend time finding the perfect wallpaper and all of that. And also, more broadly speaking, I feel like now more than ever, personalization and customization are really important more than before because we are using these devices so much, whether it's for, like, again, wasting time or for studying from home or working from home. And so it was kind of obviously not ideal that we're living in a pandemic, but as far as home screen customization goes, it was sort of like the perfect storm scenario for Apple this time around. And so they should do more things in iOS 15. My concern is that by focusing on iOS 15 again, we're going to have to wait another year to get widgets on iPad, which that would be super annoying.
I think that we might see stuff like the home, like customization and widgets and that kind of stuff be like for the first version of iOS, what like emoji is for the later ones of like picking people up, you know? And so I think that's something that we could see for sure, is seeing more of this stuff to try and bring people in. It's always, I think it's in Apple's best interest to find things that can get people to upgrade, right? Like that's what they want to happen. And this is clearly something that took off in the mainstream, like emoji. I would be very surprised if we don't see like, and hey, this is what we're doing with widgets this year. Like I would be really surprised if they don't have some kind of update at WWDC for that. Talking about the visuals, there was saw this on Mac Rumors. Apple has an app called Apple Music for Artists, which is effectively the Apple Music version of App Store Connect, which is also pertinent to this discussion. Both of these applications in the last 5 or 6 months have received updates for their icons. App Store Connect was first in October, and then the Apple Music for Artists was a couple of days ago. And they both have a very distinct visual style. They're both white icons with a kind of line that runs around the outside. And then the logo in the middle, the App Store logo or the music logo, which is recessed and has some depth to it, has a bit of life to it. Also kind of reminiscent, honestly, of a Big Sur icon. Like that there is actual depth in the icons.
But like the opposite depth, right? Like Big Sur icons are like coming out of the icon.
Yeah, they there's also an app called Transporter, which I don't know what that is, but that came from how did we decide on saying Joe's name?
Rossignol.
There you go. Of Mac Rumors, who's in the Relay FM members Discord right now. I don't know what Transporter is, but it's an application where you, quote, upload content to Apple.
It says right there, upload content to Apple.
I guess we all use Transporter all the time. You know, look, it could be easier to say that this is just like could be anything, but this also could be a design trend that they will be going on for iOS 15 of adding a bit more depth and life to these application icons, because it's something that they started with Big Sur maybe they would bring it to iOS too.
My theory that I shared privately in iMessage last night, which I am going to make public right now, is that they are going to use the Big Sur icons as like the model for the iOS icons, in the sense that, you know how you have like wax seals, right? That you're stamp when you're stamping things. So like the Big Sur icons, because they are 3D, right? What's the opposite of recessed, Myke? You deal with paper and that kind of stuff. You must know these things.
It's like embossed and debossed.
Yeah, that thing. So basically the Big Sur icons will, like, these new iOS icons are what happens if you stamp a Big Sur icons on a screen. You get the recessed effect. That's my theory.
Oh, so, okay. If you took like the Maps icon and smushed it onto some clay,
Yes.
what you'd be left with is the iOS icon. That's how they go together now.
What you get is the new style. So you take a Big Sur icon, you smush it on a piece of...
Smush it.
Yes.
Will they be backwards then?
They can't think too much about this.
Okay.
Well, they can't... No, they will be backwards, obviously.
That's not good. You don't want that. So, okay, so we smush the icons together and then put them in a mirror.
Right. There you go. Yes.
It's, I mean, the
Yes.
transporter one is like you could pour liquid into that arrow and it would hold it. I like the look. I think it's cool. I hope we see more of this depth returning to the interface.
I tried Good Task out. So
Okay.
we were talking. So last time, both Federico and I decided that Tick wasn't for us. How did that make you feel, Stephen? Were you okay with that?
I have a lot of things to talk to you about that, but not for today. So
Okay. So I decided Tick wasn't for me. So I thought, all right, I'm going to download Good Task again. Good Task also doesn't do the main thing that I want to do, which is the thing that I described, like that I like with OmniFocus. I didn't like it with Tick, which is adding multiple tags to a task that can be arbitrarily named. Good Task also wants the tag to be all one word, which I don't like. What I like in OmniFocus, like multiple words. It's just like a little thing that I attach. I put emoji in it and stuff, and I like that. And it also kind of, Good Task is daunting. It really is. It's Tick and Good Task are almost like mirror images of each other, where like Tick looks really simple, but you can it's got like so many features if you just look around for them. And Good Task just has a lot of features and you see them immediately. Like it's
doesn't
like
care about hiding them.
it's very much in your face. Ultimately, I've realized that the system that I have built for myself and that I like right now is just it's best served by OmniFocus, so it's what I'm going to stick with. I will say I don't like the UI of either of these applications, ultimately, like Good Task or Tick, for very different reasons. Like, I think I kind of touched on it already, but Good Task is like super busy, like it doesn't feel like an iOS app in its own way. It's like, that's just how about everything. And then I remembered the thing that annoyed me the most, which I know I can turn off, but this annoyed me the first time I tried it, which is the good morning notification that Good Task sends you.
And it says, "Good morning, my friend."
Yeah, and it's just like, I don't want an application to wish me good morning.
And we're not friends, also.
But it's like, this is an application. Like, my task manager for me is like, this application's notifications are some of the more important notifications that I get. So I like I see it, it's like, oh, what does it say? Oh, it's like, I look at my phone, look onto my phone, and it's locked, so I don't get the notification preview, right? And it's like, Good Task. Like, oh, pick it up. Good morning. Shut up, Good Task. Right? Like, I don't want this.
Not now.
So that wasn't that was the reason I uninstalled the app, because like before then I was like, I don't think this is right for me. Maybe I'll come back to it. And I saw that notification, and I thought to myself, this isn't going to work. And then I removed both Good Task and Tick from my phone. Because I've just realized, like, I don't need a new task manager right now. I'm, as I said before, mostly happy with OmniFocus, and the ways that I've got it. The things that I don't like about it, I've mostly been able to build my own functionality and shortcuts and stuff for it to get rid of it. But I really like the flexibility that I've been able to build in that system via the use of tags and perspectives. And this is just not really a thing that other applications want to do in the same way. And all of these apps are built with different mentalities in mind, and this is the OmniFocus one.
No, that makes sense. I understand why this is not the app for you, and especially with all those settings and all that complexity. A lot of the best apps on Apple platforms are the ones that strike that balance of hiding complexity from you, but also having tons of power user features. And GoodTask has a lot of power user features, but it just doesn't care about hiding the complexity from you or having a scalable sense of complexity, right? That when you start with the app, it looks simple, but then it's sort of like progressive disclosure, if you will, that complexity is progressively revealed to you. No, it just doesn't care about that.
It's one of the only apps that I've ever used that does that thing that so many apps does, which is like, hey, let me talk you through how we work here. And you're going, and then it's like, all of a sudden, here's everything. Like usually applications that bother to have one of those like splash screen intro things would then, I don't know, try and hold your hand a little bit more. This one does not. It does not want to hold your hand.
Yeah, no, it just it doesn't hold anything. No, it doesn't care. It throws you off a cliff and leaves you there. So here's what I've been thinking about task managers, which is sort of also connects us to our next topic, because I think they're kind of related. I've been doing, especially over the past year, I've been rebuilding and rethinking about a lot of aspects of my setup in general. We talked about how I switched email clients. I've been on a whole journey with read later apps that eventually concluded last week in Mac Stories Weekly. I've been changing a lot of things, and the one aspect that I'm still not sure about is the task manager, right? I'm using GoodTask and I'm happy about it. And of all the ones that I tested, it's definitely the best one for me at the moment. But the more I think about like myself in the context of Federico as a person managing tasks, the more I realize that where I really struggle in my professional life is in reconciling how much time I spend taking notes and writing and creating tasks for that text content. Like I keep struggling with this problem of I'm writing documentation for Mac Stories, or I'm working on a long form article for the site. And there's a task that, imagine these long documents. There's a task that belongs to a specific portion of the document. And there's this disconnect between the document I'm working on. Again, it can be creative work or it can be admin work. It doesn't matter. I'm still working with text. And there's this disconnect between the document and the task manager. And I've tried to solve this issue in a bunch of different ways over the years, and I still haven't found a solution. And what I end up doing is, I can work with my task manager and my writing app of choice side by side in split view, but it's just that disconnect between, this line of text that contains something that I gotta do, and the task manager that contains the same task, but it's completely disconnected from that piece of text. And so I end up creating like these double references in my system, right? So I leave a reminder in IA Writer, for example, but then I also recreate a task that says the same thing, but it's in my task manager, because that's the only place where I can have a date and I can have like proper task attributes. And so I feel like I'm doing this work twice, and I've been doing this for years. Like I leave reminders in my iOS reviews when I'm writing them in IA Writer, and I leave little tasks for me in Craft when I'm working on documents for Mac Stories and for the club. I've always been doing this. The only time when I sort of found a solution for this, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, when I was using Drafts at the time as my text editor. And that's the only time where I kind of put together a system that fixed this. I remember I had a script and I wrote about it. It must be in a Mac Stories Weekly newsletter. Boy, if only there was an easy way to search those.
It's like burn, but also.
I had this script that scanned my document for reminders I left to myself with a specific syntax that I came up with. And basically that script created reminders in the Reminders app and linked those with drafts. So like I put together this two-way communication between drafts and reminders that was sort of close to my ideal of, because I feel like I've always been chasing this dream of, can I connect my task manager and my note-taking app or my text editor in some way? And I don't know. Sometimes I think about it and I realize, boy, what I'm really seeking here is HyperCard and having these systems that can embed one within the other. I mean, what an idea, right? But yeah, so that thing, it still doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. I came close to it years ago, but it was sort of hacky and, does it make sense what I'm trying to explain?
Yeah, it does. And
I don't think it's ideal. I don't think it's ideal that I end up creating these tasks twice, basically.
Well, TickTick has full markdown support in the notes, so you could just
No,
write.
I'm not writing my articles in TickTick, Steven.
In
Nope.
TickTick.
Nope.
This episode of Connected is brought to you by our friends at Smile and their application PDF Pen. Does your PDF editor allow you to secure documents, do OCR scanning, fill out and sign forms? Does it allow you to do all of that on the go and at a low cost? PDF Pen does. PDF Pen is the all-purpose PDF editor that also allows you to improve your workflow and productivity, add signatures, text, and images, make changes, and correct typos. Just the other day, I had to scan a bunch of PDFs, and I needed them to be OCR'd. I needed to be able to get the information out of them, and so I turned to PDF Pen on my Mac, and it was spectacular. I can search those PDFs now. It does a great job. This is really a tool you need if you work with PDFs at all. And you can keep everything synced because PDF Pen and PDF Pen Pro work with PDF Pen for iPad and iPhone for seamless editing across devices using cloud services like iCloud, Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive, etc. You can learn more about PDF Pen and PDF Pen Pro at pdfpen.com/podcast. That's pdfpen.com/podcast. Our thanks to PDF Pen from Smile for the support of the show and Relay FM. So we had an email from Matthew saying, you guys talk a lot about task managers. What do you use to track ideas for the future? And so they listed some examples like future discussions, content, features, app ideas, etc. And I thought this was really interesting because I actually just went through this where before I would leave, say, ideas for 512 articles just at the bottom of my 512 pixels to-do list. And then every once in a while, I would just promote one of them with a date and say, I'm going to write this one today. But I was never really happy with that because it was sort of all intermixed with other stuff. And so I actually recently took this sort of idea tracking and put it into things. And so I have a things list for columns I want to write, streams I want to host, videos I want to make. And then I can go through there and pick what looks good and then, bring it into my task manager when I'm going to actually do it. And I've enjoyed that separation so far.
What made you want to use things for this?
Because it's beautiful and I will never have a repeating content idea. So I'm not going to hit their limitations.
So this is one of those things where I'm just trying to get in your headspace for this. So if you just you're like, oh, I want to write an article about this, you would just go and put it in things. You would never put it in TickTick because remind me to do it on Wednesday.
If I had a date in mind, it would go in TickTick. I want to cover this on this date. But for other ideas that for instance, like YouTube videos I want to put on the channel, basically that's just like a list of computers. And at some point when I get back around to making another video, I'll go in there and see which one sort of tickles my fancy in the moment. So they're more, they're not as tied to a schedule in this state. But if an idea does come up that, I know, hey, I want to do this next week, or I want to do it on this date to hit an anniversary or whatever it is, then it'll become a task. But these are sort of like floating ideas in the mist, and I can just reach out and grab one if I want it.
Because like all of this stuff for me, this is what goes in a notes app. Like this is how I think of it in my mind. Like, so if I had something specific where I was like, oh, I want to do this thing, or I have this idea, and if I can ever think of any way at which a date could be attached to it, it would go in OmniFocus. But if it's like an idea, like you're saying, like, oh, I have something I want to make an episode of a show about, or I've had an idea for like a product or a merch thing that I want to do or whatever, then it would go into notes for me, because I would consider these kinds of things as like parts of brainstorms, or they would be a jumping off point for more thinking. So it either goes into, depending on what it's about, it will either go into notes or craft. Because I have basically now at this point, for like the two areas of work that I think about, I like split it down the middle. Most of it goes in notes. I also put personal stuff in notes, and then craft for other types of work stuff. Right now, it's anything to do with Cortex brand. It all goes in to craft, because that's where like come out with product ideas and all that kind of stuff. That all goes in craft. I'm actually really enjoying craft more and more. Like text and images and drawing and multimedia are all living in one place. The structure and organization is good. And the more I'm getting used to it, the more I'm like looking past the parts that I find to be a bit weird, because I'm benefiting so much from what I enjoy about it. I could imagine moving more and more stuff to craft in the future, because I'm genuinely enjoying everything that it can do, the way it works, the way I can format, and how often they're adding new features. But to me, like all of this kind of stuff, it always just finds its way into a note of some kind until it's ready to become a task, if that makes sense. Like if I was doing what you were doing, Stephen, if I was like making YouTube videos, right, I would just have a YouTube videos note, like video ideas note, and I would put all my video ideas in there until I was ready to then go ahead and do one of those. Like this, an example for me is the keyboard stream stuff. I'll have an idea. I'll be like, oh, I want to try doing this thing. And I have a stream ideas note, and I put all my ideas in there. And then every Wednesday, I have a task in OmniFocus to confirm what I want to do for that Friday's stream. So like that's kind of the way that this stuff works for me. It's like, if it's not like a task of a due date and stuff, it's just going to go in a note somewhere, because that's kind of like how I think and feel about all that kind of content. It just lives in a notes app.
That's what I used to do. Something about having it just as a list kind of in its own place just seems to make more sense to me, but I totally get it.
I've been thinking about this a lot, as I said a few minutes ago, especially in the context of not just the tension that I mentioned between the text editor and the task manager, but also something that I do, which is how do I decide what is an idea and what is a task, and where do you draw the line when it comes to things that you have on your mind, like things that you're thinking about. How do you know when those things become actionable, as the GTD people would say? And so I think it's important for me to clarify here how anything I put into my task manager, Myke said this before, I think we're very similar in that regard. Anything that goes into the task manager has a date attached to it. At the very least, there's a date. Most of the times, personally, there's also a time, because I try to schedule my day pretty, well, not down to the minute, but I try to save some things for the morning and some things for the afternoon, and try to follow that sort of structure. But anything that goes into my task manager anyway has a date. And by giving it a date, it means I'm making it actionable on a specific day, and usually at a specific moment of the day. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I find myself doing this a lot, where I may have a few things on my mind of like ideas for stories or ideas for shortcuts, right? But I need to think about them some more. And something that I guess I do a lot, and maybe it's not optimal in terms of, saving brain power resources. I let those ideas simmer for a long time. And I guess maybe I continually process them in the background. I don't have an exact way to describe this, but like when I think of something, I tend to be very deliberate, especially as I grow older with the articles that I write and with the shortcuts that I make. And I don't know, I just feel like I need to think about stuff for a while before I commit to it. But in that time period, right, when I have the idea and when I let the idea just sit there for a while, is that a task? Is that still an idea? I personally classify it as an idea. I don't think it's a task. It's not a clear item that can be checked off a list. But it's also more than an idea, right? Because I'm developing the idea. And I guess maybe I am part of the problem because maybe I need to be more, let's say, official in like taking notes about the idea and literally documenting every single thought that is in my mind about that idea. Maybe I don't do that as often as I should, but I still don't think it makes that jump right away from idea to task. And I find it really weird as a concept, which is why maybe I keep wishing for a two-way communication between my note-taking app and my task manager, because those lines are very blurry, at least in my mind. And so what I've started doing for the past year or so, and I think I mentioned this before, I have this personal note that I open many, many times every single day called the dashboard, which is literally like a text note that has a bunch of, I call them quick links at the top. Those are basically launchers for things that I do frequently. So taking notes for Connected, taking note like saving ideas for app stories, or saving an idea for an article. And so those are quick links that take me to other notes where I save those ideas. And then there's a line break, like a horizontal line separator. And then it's just a blank note. And when I think of something that is not a task, but it's also something that is semi-actionable, I save it there. Because then I gotta decide, okay, what am I gonna do with this? Like, for example, yesterday, a friend of ours, so my friends have started doing this thing where when they need to do when they need to do translations from Italian to English, they ask me. It's like, hey, can you give this like a second read to make sure that it's proper English? And I'm happy to do it. It's fine. So this friend, she texted me yesterday saying, hey, I have this Pages document that I translated to English, but I'm not sure about the English translation. Can you do it at some point? And what I did was I just put a reminder in the dashboard note saying, at some point this week, you got to do this. I don't know when. I don't know when I will have the time to do this. I know that I have to do it eventually. I don't like the idea of scheduling it right away, but I also don't want to forget about it, right? And so I save it there. And then it's a bunch of other things like, oh, let me look right now, I guess.
I think without making a joke, I'm not trying to make a joke, but this sounds like the kind of way that a lot of people use tools like Notion. Like people have what they call these personal dashboards and stuff like that, where it's pulling data from.
Mine is not fancy. Mine is just text.
No. I know. It's very manual. But I'm just saying, like it's like a similar idea. I think just
so
execute.
The idea is yes. I guess it's similar to that. I guess the idea is I just want to have an in-between space where I can save things that technically they're not tasks, right? In the GTD sense. Sometimes they are ideas for, like sometimes I just open the note and say, think about a connected topic, right? For example. it's not a task. I'm reminding myself to think about something that will become a task eventually. But it's just I feel better about having this space that it's sort of like a brain organizer. I don't know how to call it. I guess dashboard is a good word for it. It's a place where I can organize everything that's on my mind, even though those things are not tasks. I don't know. Maybe I'm weird, but it just I'm feeling a lot better since I've been doing this. I still forget about stuff sometimes, which is why like sometimes when we're driving and Sylvia and I were talking, and she's like she suggests like things to try for the club or things to try for Mac stories. I'm like, can you please open the dashboard note? Can you please save it there, because otherwise I'm gonna forget. And she never wants to do it. And I tend to forget about those things. So what I've noticed about myself is I have to write down everything that I'm thinking about. And I like having this middle ground for things that are future tasks, I guess, would be another way to call them. These are future tasks that haven't taken shape yet. But the seed of those tasks exist somewhere, but I'm not ready to put them in a task manager yet. I don't feel comfortable creating tasks that say, think about topic, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. A task for me is like an actual thing to do. Like sit down and write for 30 minutes. That's a task. I guess maybe sit down and think would be I don't know. There's something about it that makes me feel odd.
I do think that there is an element of these tools becoming more prevalent for people. Like stuff like Notion and Roam and Craft, and as an idea of providing a place for these types of things to go. I do think that it's becoming a thing that people are finding use in, and you've just got your own way of doing it. How often do you check in with this note?
Oh, multiple times a day.
Okay.
Yeah, it's I got a custom icon in my iPhone dock to open the note.
Dock. Fancy.
Yeah. Also, I feel like a part of the reason is it creates less pressure than seeing like 25 tasks due today in your task manager. Because when I open the dashboard, I see, oh, these are not like critical and urgent tasks. These are like reserve some time for thinking and consider this idea.
Yeah.
I don't know. I tried to be a sort of like a hyper scheduler before, right? I tried to live that kind of lifestyle, and it was just terrible. And then everything becomes overdue, and everything gets like a red font, and you get the badge on the icon. So I don't like to do that anymore. I tend to be my task manager doesn't have a lot of tasks, and that's not because I don't have work to do, not because I'm lazy, but because I try to be very deliberate with the things that I put in there. And I try to be realistic also. Like, what's the purpose of scheduling 5 tasks at 5 p.m.? It's not like at 5 p.m. I can do 5 things, right? So, yeah, I don't know.
Oh, it is tricky. And I think that it's okay if it is fluid and changes over time. The problem of I need to remind myself to have time to think about something is definitely tricky. Sometimes I do put those as a task of like, usually with the verb being like plan for this series or plan for this episode. But that's so...
I like that.
Yeah, but even that's kind of fuzzy.
It's thinking time, but most of the time, I guess, yeah.
I make tasks like that too, which are like it's like instructing me to do something. Think about this.
And so you make tasks for those with the due date and a due time. I see. I guess also part of the problem, at least on Apple platforms and at least I guess on iOS and iPadOS, is the capturing of these ideas, right? Really, the fastest way on iOS is to use reminders and to use either Siri on the iPhone or the Apple Watch to say, hey, remind me about this. And that's by far the easiest way. But I think it's folks feel this problem a lot less on the Mac, right? Because you don't have those kinds of limitations. You can add the OmniFocus quick entry window, and it's the same for things and Todoist, and you can have Apple scripts launching system-wide. But I'm feeling that, right, on iOS. That's why I end up creating a custom icon that launches my dashboard, because having the fastest possible capture for these ideas, for these tasks and semi-tasks is really important for me. Making it easy and super fast to be able to get an idea out of my brain and into some kind of page. Which is why, in the context of the evolution of iOS and iOS 15, I really hope that Apple expands this thing that they don't want you to call changing the default in Siri, but it's basically what it is. I really hope that they continue down this path of letting you pick a default for Siri, and that the next domains for this will be note-taking and task management. Imagine if you could just say, hey, assistant, remind me about this, and it goes into things, or it goes into OmniFocus, and same for like make a note, instead of going into Apple Notes, and goes into drafts, right? Or craft or something else like that. So I really hope that Siri, they continue to expand that intelligent recommendation engine that they have for 14.5. But otherwise, yeah, I don't know. I'm continuing to think about where I'm at the moment with like the relationship between my note-taking app and my task manager, and how do I understand when something is a note and when it becomes a task. It's a topic that I not something that I think I've solved.
This episode of Connected is also brought to you by Squarespace. If you have a new idea, a new business, a new project, you should start with Squarespace. It lets you easily create a website for your next idea with a unique domain name, award-winning templates, and so much more. So if you need an online store or portfolio or a blog or a members-only section or a podcast, Squarespace is the all-in-one platform that lets you do all of that stuff. And there's nothing to install, there are no patches to worry about, no upgrades are needed. Squarespace has all of that covered. They have award-winning 24/7 customer support if you need any help. Lets you quickly and easily grab a unique domain name, and all of their award-winning templates are beautifully designed to show off your great ideas. One of my favorite things about working in Squarespace is that if you need to add functionality to your site later on, you don't have to burn it down and start over. You can just say, hey, add a blog here, put a portfolio over there. Yes, I do need a store now. It can grow with your project or your company over time. Squarespace plans start at just $12 a month, but you can start a trial with no credit card required by going to squarespace.com/connected. When you decide to sign up, use the offer code CONNECTED to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain name and to show your support for the show. Once again, that's squarespace.com/connected and the code CONNECTED to get 10% off your first purchase. We thank Squarespace for the support of the show and all of Relay FM. Squarespace, make your next move, make your next website.
So Lauren Good wrote a really wonderful article at Wired talking about how the devices and services that she uses kept reminding her of painful memories after having ended a relationship and calling off a wedding in late 2019. It is truly fantastic, incredibly well-considered, researched piece that you should read. She speaks to people at companies like Google and Pinterest about how they create their memories features, the impacts that they think this stuff might have. And it is, I think, a rare article that around technology which interweaves personal with the technology, in the sense of like she moves backwards and forwards as she tells the story between this is tech and this is me interviewing someone in one of these companies. Now let me tell you a bit more of the personal side of it again. And she kind of like tells her story of the last year at the same time. It really, I'm not doing it justice. Like, you really should read it.
It's incredible.
I had seen people linking to it, but I hadn't read it until I just hadn't gotten to it yet. And then I saw Stephen's link to it on 512, which was a also beautiful, heartfelt, and open discussion about some of the experiences that he has faced with family struggles, which you should also read, and they will both be in the show notes. I don't know how much of it you want to necessarily touch on right now, or if you feel like it's worthy of touching on right now for the context.
Yeah, I mean, just briefly, I think longtime listeners will know our oldest son was diagnosed with brain cancer as a baby and underwent chemo and treatment and surgery all at St. Jude. That's why Relay FM raises money for St. Jude every year, because of their life-saving work, not only in our family's life, but in lots of families' lives. So that clearly was a very traumatic time, and yeah, that's kind of where this article picks up.
And so I wanted to talk about some of this stuff a little bit because, this is definitely something I've been thinking about. I think everyone, the three of us as well, the last year or two, there have been some difficult things that have happened in our lives. Mm-hmm. And as I'm sure, many people have had tough times over the last year, but I think we've all had some uniquely weird or tricky things occur that aren't necessarily COVID related or not COVID related at all. And one of the things that is very strange is that you don't have to look for memories anymore, or you don't have to be nostalgic and go and check your photos, because your memories come find you. And sometimes these memories include things or people that you might not want to necessarily be thinking about at that moment. Mm-hmm. Like, sometimes this comes about in really beautiful moments.
Yeah.
Or memories that hit you out of the blue, and you're like, oh, that's so good, or like, I really miss that person, but it's a good thing, like I see pictures of the three of us together and it's like, I really miss that, but I know it will happen again, so like it's an optimistic type of thing. But sometimes there are things that pop up that you either would want to forget, or it's like, I didn't necessarily want my day derailed by seeing this person's face right now. And there is almost like this feeling of our memories being weaponized against us in some way to make us feel things like good. I mean, by intention, I believe with these systems, they're meant to make you feel good things. So therefore you love your device or love your service more because it's reminding you of these good things. Mm-hmm. But there is no real distinction between what's good and bad.
The system doesn't care. The system doesn't know what's good or bad, right? Because
you were going to say the system doesn't care. I actually think that is also relevant. Yeah. Because, I do believe that there is work that can be done which is complicated to try and alleviate some of these issues. I'll give an example. And this just feels like an example to me, which I feel like could be written into, say, the photos widget, right? If I have lots of photos of someone over a period of time, and then there are no more photos of that person.
I was about to suggest that, yes.
Stop showing me photos of that person for a bit.
Yep.
Because what could that mean? That could mean that person died. That could mean that person has broken up with somebody else, right? Especially breakups, right? And I think this is one of, or it could be of a pet as well, right? It's not just a person, but especially if I have tagged this person in my photos library to suggest that they're that important of me, and if I take a picture of them once a week, and then for a month there are no pictures, maybe just don't show me them for a bit and see if it changes. If it doesn't, let's just chill for a bit on reminding me of that person. Because this is a big thing for breakups. It's the thing that Lauren is talking about in her article. Relationships end. And when they do, typically what you don't want is to keep having to think about that person, right? Yeah. But and I think that this is also sometimes I think even more so with death, because that person's gone, right?
I've been having this very issue. I haven't mentioned it publicly. But I guess this is the right segment for it. So my dad passed away 6 months ago. Actually, on the day that I had to publish my iOS 14 review. Actually, 30 minutes before I had to publish my iOS 14 review.
Yeah.
And the reason why I don't use the Photos widget, and the reason why it stops me in my tracks whenever I sometimes accidentally open the people section of the Photos app, it's that that it keeps recommending photos of my dad, and it comes up at the very top of the people list, and it's I know how to get rid of that face, as Photos calls it, people, faces, whatever.
But that doesn't stop the memories.
But it doesn't stop the memories, and it doesn't stop the Photos widget, and it doesn't, the system, again, the system doesn't care, the system doesn't know, but it should, right? It should, the algorithms, they should be infused with some sense of humanity. I think it's what we're getting at here, because I shouldn't have to software on my phone shouldn't make me feel bad, I think. And the same applies to social networks. The same applies to, Facebook recommending a memory from 7 years ago with somebody that you either broke up with or maybe that person died. And I think the more we are now using these devices and the more personal they get, because they have so much data about us, they have so much information, and arguably these algorithms have gotten really smart at things like identifying people, identifying animals. They are very good at being computers, and they are very bad at being human. That's the thing. And so, yeah, I can I don't have a good solution for this. I think, practically speaking, I also had the same idea that you had, Myke, of maybe if you can find this person in Photos in a while, maybe use that as a signal, right? That it means something. And I know that Apple, I talk about Apple because that's the topic that I know more closely. I know that they do things and now we can recognize in Photos when somebody is smiling, or when they're looking straight at the camera, or we recognize blurry photos. I mean, that's great, technically speaking, but also you should account for the other side of this, which is in the Lawrence story, I broke up with this person, or what Steven wrote, maybe those memories from years ago, from a different time. You can find those photos, but you shouldn't make assumptions that those are happy photos.
It's not that even that the tools aren't good enough, because the tools aren't good enough, but at least the way that Apple does it, say a photo comes up and I don't want it in the widget for whatever reason, I can only act on that photo once it's shown it to me. I mean, it's like getting punched in the face and then saying, "Please don't punch me a second time." It's you've already hit me with it, and now I've got to go in and tell it, I want you to, keep this image out of featured images, or block this memory, or forget this face, whatever it is. And again, I'm with you, Federico. I don't know how all that's fixed, but there should be better tools around this. Whether that's some sort of opt-in, yes, I want memories, but only from these 5 people, and not necessarily everybody else, whatever it is. But it really just struck me in her article that, something that I've dealt with, and I think a lot of other people deal with. And, most of the time, I really love the Photos widget. I have it on my second screen on my phone, and most of the time it's fantastic. But there are those times where there is an image that I don't want to be reminded of, or that I know that if I see it, it's going to put me in a place I don't want to be, and it's just really tricky to find that balance. And we're going to talk about some ways, maybe some other ways to go about this, but yeah, I really wanted to talk about how that actually affects us as people, because I think it's something that anyone could deal with.
And so, similarly to Federico, at the end of 2019 and in the beginning of 2020, we had two surprising and pretty significant family deaths. Like, they just was pretty tough. And these people pop up still. And it's just like, I know why you're showing me this, but like, you know, and I just think I think that there's going to be a bit of a reckoning for this type of stuff after what 2020 has been. You know, like, so many people have lost family members this year that, like, I can only assume that these types of features are just going to start to get, like, people are just going to start getting more and more upset at them. You know, and like, there are a couple of ways to do things. I mean, one of them is one that I have done, and it's not great, really. It's just like, I've had to delete some images. And it's like, this is not really the solution.
Yeah.
You know, like, and a way to handle that is, like, if there are images that I think I might want in the future, I just remove them from photos, right? Like, I save them somewhere else, and maybe I will bring these back later on. But that's also kind of like a real ham-fisted way to handle this. And like, so we're talking about the widget, but it's not just the widget, right? Because like, the Photos app like is now really wanting these things in your face. And again, I want to just say, like, when I find so more frequently I find good things, but the good feeling that I feel is not as strong as the bad feeling if I find a bad image, right? It's like the misbalance is so off that, like, I could have like 6 days in a row all happy memories, but then one day a bad thing, and then I'm upset more in that day for seeing that image than I am in others. I will give everybody a tip though for a thing that I've done which makes me happier, and I've recommended to some people in my life. We've previously spoke about Widgetsmith. If you like the idea of the Photos widget, but the Photos widget has stuff in it that's painful for you, pick a bunch of images over a period of time and put them into a folder, like an album in the Photos app, and then create a Widgetsmith widget which pulls images from an album. And then you can have them in all sizes, and it can show up, and then you're just going to see only the images that you've chosen. So all happy memories, right? So, like, because honestly, like, we all know this, AI, machine learning, it's not clever. Like, every company tries to talk about how smart their systems are. The systems are stupid, right? These systems aren't smart, right? It's like trying to cut something with a hammer. It's like, it will break it in half, right? Like, you keep smashing it. You are going to cut this thing in half, but you're doing it in a very, very blunt way. This is not the way that you want to do this. And like, that's where we are with this stuff. And all of the tech companies are trying to talk, you know, they try and talk about how smart their systems are, but they just aren't, right? And so I think that there is an element of trying to be aware of yourself, and especially like with taking an example from Steven of like looking at yourself, trying to understand what is the thing that's upsetting me, and then taking steps for it before it becomes a problem.
Yeah, and that's really why I wrote what I did. It wasn't so much about these systems should be better, although that is totally true. But for me, I was in a situation where, okay, there's a set of photos from a specific time span before our son was diagnosed, and now I can see the symptoms that he was experiencing, but I couldn't then because I didn't know to look for them. No parent would. They're subtle, and neuro stuff is weird. But you know, for a long time I've really struggled when one of those photos has popped up, really feeling really bad, and it got to a point where it was inhibiting me from really moving on, moving forward in life. And when something is like that, you know, where it can really derail you in a way, or it can cause, you know, shame and fear and anxiety and all those things. And like, you know, maybe it is time to deal with those on a more serious or professional level. And that's kind of where I was. And I wrote about that in the piece, but you know, I think there's levels to this. Yeah, there may just be pictures I don't want to be reminded of, like a spring break trip that went sideways. But then there's other images that, like, okay, if I have this visceral reaction to them every time, that's feels like a different thing.
I also wanted to have one final tip when it comes to apps. Like if you want to have a photo widget, and if you like Myke, also keep your best photos in a separate album. But if you want to have like a photo widget with a bunch of extra controls, I believe the developer of Launcher, they released a new app a few days ago called Smart Photo Widget, and it's really nice because it's got a bunch of filters. So you can point the app at an album, and they have filters for like automatically skipping photos where your eyes are closed, or like overexposed photos, blurry photos, screenshots. They have a bunch of settings that you can tweak, and so it's like it's a similar take on other photo widgets that you may have found on the App Store, but this one is really nice because it's got a bunch of options and a bunch of different filters for picking your best photos. So all of this should really be built into the default photo widget by Apple, but hey, that's where third-party developers come in.
What's the name of that one, Federico?
Smart Photo Widget. If it doesn't come up in search, you can find it by looking for Launcher and then clicking on the developer profile page. Yes, Steven just put in a link in the Discord as well. That is the correct one.
Japes.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like,
Not
what
always.
if? Sometimes it's like, what if japes were sad, right?
It was just something that I don't know. It felt important.
Yeah, I mean, we can be serious too, you know.
It is important, especially if you're, kind of in the situation that I was in with it, where it was just overwhelming. And, if that's where you are with this stuff, then like I would encourage you to find somebody to talk to about that. I said this in my tweet. I didn't really expect to like talk about my PTSD on the internet this week, but I believe that, it was a good response to Lauren's piece and that we're talking about it for a reason. So, if you have something like this that you're struggling with, take some time and consider it. And
yes,
it's always good to ask for help. There's absolutely no shame or embarrassment about that whatsoever. It can be a very useful tool to speak to somebody else.
Something that I discovered over the past few months is like, don't be afraid to ask for help and just to talk even to like a relative or a friend about it. Like, people are willing to listen to you. If you have somebody close to you, don't be afraid to open up and talk about stuff. That's what I did, and it really helps.
Please read Lauren Good's article because it's just sublime.
I think that does it this week.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to find links to the stuff we spoke about, they're in your podcast app of choice, probably, but they're also on the web all the time at relay.fm/connected/340. While you're there, you can send us an email. I love emails. Send me some emails.
Yeah, he loves them. You can't get enough of them. He's always texting us saying, "Oh, I love these emails."
I printed them out and mailed them to y'all. You'll get them soon.
Good luck.
You can also become a member and get access to Connected Pro, which is a longer ad-free version of the show. This week, we decided on what to call listeners of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to leave it at that for now.
Mm-hmm.
You can find us all online if for some reason you want more of us. You can find Myke on Twitter as IMYKE. Myke hosts keyboard streams over on Twitch at myke.live, and he hosts a bunch of other shows here on Relay FM. You can find Federico on Mac Stories, where he is the editor-in-chief, keeping out for his 14.5 article whenever Apple decides to update iOS again. Whenever that is.
The beta rate next week. Can't wait.
You can find him on Twitter as Vitici as well. Now, for the last several months, I've been asking Federico questions,
Yes.
right, to better get to know him,
Yeah.
as you would on a first date.
Oh, so you're done now? They're over?
Are we moving to the second date?
I'm building up to
Okay.
my question.
Okay.
Tell me about your and Sylvia's first date.
Oh boy. So she's gonna hate me.
Hey-o.
we haven't exactly dated in the sense that before becoming a couple, we had been friends, really close friends for like 5 years. We did the entire 5 years of high school together. And it was in the last 3 months of high school that we realized we actually liked each other as more than friends. And
how long have you two known each other?
ooh, well, like she was very mean to me back in middle school.
Oh,
To be
that's
fair,
that kind of like mean when you like.
to be
them
fair,
kind of
like
thing,
Sylvia in middle school, she was like one of the mean girls at the school. And I mean, I was also like, I was short and kind of, chubby and like with glasses. Like I was a bit of a nerd. I did like, it's not like I was bullied or anything, but just I was not one of the cool kids at all. Thankfully, I always made it up in terms of like being fun. And like having, like I've always been this way. Like I was a bit of a nerd, but I always had like the joke ready to go in class. So Sylvia didn't really notice me back in middle school. I did notice her, for sure. But then we ended up in high school together, and high school in Italy is different from America in that it's the same class with the same people for 5 years. And so we had been in high school in the same class, same group of 25 something kids for 5 years. And then it was in the very last few months of high school that I realized, I actually I like her more than as a friend. And she thought the same, but we were like not admitting that to each other. And so in Italy, in Italian high school, I guess there's this tradition. I don't know if it's the same elsewhere, Myke, in the UK, maybe, I don't know. We call it the 100 days lunch, where basically 100 days before the final exams, the class has a lunch together alongside the teachers at a restaurant.
Oh, nice.
That's fun.
Yeah, it's a nice tradition. It's fun. It's like 3 months, basically 3 months and something before the final exams. We all go to lunch together at a restaurant. And so the first date, I guess, will be Sylvia and I got drunk and they found us making out outside.
Along with 98 of your fellow students. The most intimate of first dates.
No, it's not 98 people. It's 100. It's 100 days, Myke, not 100 people.
Oh, yeah. I've just
yes.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, and then
that's good.
My best friend, one of my best friends back then, he found us and was like, "Oh, you guys have finally realized." He said something along the lines of like it was about time or something like that. They were all really happy for us, and my friend he brought us back home, and we kept making out in the back seat, and then we never stopped being together
or making out. Never stopped.
So, yeah,
to this day.
Yeah. So there was really never like a proper date.
You can find me on Twitter as ISMH. I host a bunch of other shows here on Relay FM, and I have my blog. Blogs are still a thing. I write it over at 512pixels.net. Go check it out. Before we go, I want to tell you about another show here on Relay FM that I think you would enjoy, and that is Clockwise. They are live on Wednesdays just before us, but that's not a problem because they cover 4 tech topics in just 30 minutes. It's a lot of fun, rotating panel. Go check it out at relay.fm/clockwise or search for Clockwise wherever you get your podcasts. I'd like to thank the sponsors of this show, Hello, Smile, and Squarespace. And until next week, guys, say goodbye.
Arrivederci.
Cheerio.
Bye, y'all.